And I was in the military as enlisted, and I had a college degree, and I saw what was happening. I knew the enlisted, obviously, because I was with them. And I see the officers. I knew them reasonably well and stuff too. Now, I will say that I think to do most leadership jobs in the military, you probably do need a college degree. But should it create this bifurcated officer enlisted culture? I don't think so. And I also think by predicating it on presence of a college degree, which anyone can get a college degree. So by doing that, there's no selection for leadership ability, right? You can have an enlisted that is a natural leader. Maybe they came from a poor background, they didn't get a college degree or whatever. You could have an officer who's a total loser. He just had a college degree. I mean, get this guy out of here. And everybody wants to follow the E6 or whatever. You have to start with leadership at a young age. And it's best to test these people when they're young age. You can fake it when you're 35. Figure out if these people are leaders when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, when they can't fake it. Put them through something, figure out who's a leader and who's not, then put them on the track. And if they need the education, give it to them and put them on the track. But this is bullshit. Hi, everybody. This is John back from Real Veteran News here with my good and old friend Mason Ballou, who has been on the show before. Welcome back.
Thanks.
How are you doing?
Hey, it's a good day here. Ready to talk about some of the upcoming military operations that we can maybe expect in the future.
Nice. Would you want to do a brief intro of yourself if people hadn't seen you on here before?
Mason Ballou, I am the Air Force veteran of the group. See, my background is basically just being a technology nerd. I worked at CENTCOM as like a logistics technology officer supporting warfighter operations. Then I did 6 years running an ERP at the Joint Improvised Explosive Device Defeat Organization. And since then, I've kind of been an entrepreneur working in the tech world, and I can do just about anything in technology. I'm a really good software developer.
Yes, we have a high confidence individual on the show today. Great. Talking about the news. The first article is about OpenAI, which is still pretty high on the news level here, especially in technology, because of the whole thing with Sam Altman getting kicked out a week or two ago or whatever. We talked about it on the show with Andre, and people trying to figure out what was happening in the boardroom. And I think I got a few things a little bit off, like when I was analyzing it last week. We could talk about that and just talk about OpenAI in general a little bit. But there's also an interesting new type of AI that it is rumored that they have developed, which feeds into their main chat GPT product that has been widely successful this year. That's kind of like the story of the year. What do you think about OpenAI? Mason, we haven't really talked about it yet.
I think it's one of the few times that I've heard of AI that's actually lived up to the hype. I'm very skeptical whenever somebody mentions AI because I'm just like, that's an algorithm, not AI. I've said this many times in the past. But with OpenAI, ChatGPT, I think it's actually a pretty solid product. I'm curious to see where it goes. This is a very innovative, impressive product.
Very profitable, and it has definitely been received with awe by most people in, I guess, America and the world and stuff like that. As a data scientist, it's not super advanced, and it seems like they're using a lot of memorized data versus, they basically have ingested the entire internet and memorized a lot of it. There is some actual generative AI where it's like, write me a poem about how cute Mason is or something. It'll do that. But if you say, like, tell me, how World War II went down or something, it's just going to pull some shit that it found on some website or something like that. This isn't like genius AI or anything like at that level yet. But for people who had no idea about what AI could do and have never really thought about it before a couple months ago or whatever, I can see how it would be awe-inspiring, which it has been. And that's why it's like making a lot of money, a lot of hype and stuff like that. What did you think about the firing of CEO Sam Altman and then his return?
It was because of a bad communication style. So I just think it was like a personality conflict probably is what I would guess. But it's just hard to believe that they're so good at AI that they got fired. When I heard him getting fired, I kind of thought it was like, oh, the hype train's about to end. They're going to be exposed as exactly what you just said. The initial glamour has worn off. And now we realize it's kind of just a really good algorithm. Right now, when people are referring to FTX, they're finding out that Sam Bankman-Fried's, his big expose, his sales pitch to show how much return somebody could expect was just a random number. Oh, this
random number.
It's all it was.
It's my best guess. Like, you're going to make a ton of money.
Yeah, but it really was just a random number. It was like a couple of little things and he posted on the website. And so, but all I'm saying is, so once they've gotten in the back end of this OpenAI, maybe they're seeing that it is exactly what you just said, where it's just going to spit out a Wikipedia post almost when somebody asks about World War II. So there are going to be some limitations, but I wonder if it's reaching saturation point. Kind of what you mentioned where AI consumed the internet and then it can have its output. I never really thought of it until you said this, but because everybody thinks of AI as being this exponential curve that never ends. Will it actually taper off just because of the natural natural limit of not necessarily its own capacity, but of just wisdom capacity in the known universe. That's all I got.
Well, this technology, I will say, is the most important technology that human beings have ever created and probably will ever create, at least within the next 100, however many years, up until like the next way farther than we can even imagine. Like this shit is important as hell, and we need it. Otherwise, we are going to lose our place, our country, and our culture is going to lose, and our business economy is going to lose its place of preeminence in the world. When that happens, all types of weird shit can start happening, and all types of people can start popping up all over the world, and wars and economic issues. And if we lose it, if we lose this, it's not going to be pretty. Just to go back to the issues that happened with Sam, there was a board member named Helen Toner, this Georgetown lady, and they got into a fight because she wrote this paper essentially criticizing the way the company was doing things. Sam took it personally and obviously was not happy or something, and they fought. We did have that information last week. Apparently, what they're saying, or at least there's one version of the story here, is that Sam actually tried to move against Helen first, criticized her. There was some kind of conflict. He wasn't satisfied. He was like, this woman's got to go. So he went to the other board members and tried to convince them all against Helen. But he was like playing games and being like, oh, you know, he said he doesn't like her, but like he was misrepresenting the other board members to the board members, trying to play like past with them, them all into it. Once they all got together, they were like, oh, what did he tell you? What did he tell you? What did he tell you? They all got pissed because they were getting played with. And that's when Helen was able to flip the script on him, take him out. Again, I was right. Helen did not understand the politics of what she was doing. She didn't have the capital to pull this off other than for a few days because the engineers weren't with her. If the engineers were with Helen, you could have won, but the engineers aren't going to be with you because you want to slow down AI and the rest of us don't want to because that's stupid. That's basically a better version or potentially a more updated version of the way I reported last week. This kind of Sam trying to do this boardroom like succession shit and he just failing because who knows what he's good at. I'm not saying this guy's the brightest guy in the world. He's probably bright and stuff like that, but none of these big tech leaders are infallible. They all make these big mistakes. I mean, Elon Musk just had this like Cybertruck thing and he's just making all mistakes all over the place. Now you have to open yourself up to mistakes so that you can try to like go for the fences on the things that you are going to do really well on. But it just didn't work out with him. He botched this board maneuver thing that he tried to do, if you believe this story, but he's back in control. This is one of the biggest AI companies in the world. Also said that essentially after they removed him, they immediately went to Anthropic, which is one of these other big AI companies, and tried to do a merger, probably because they thought that Anthropic was doing a better job with AI safety and could absorb OpenAI and then implement a more robust AI safety regime because they obviously liked the way Anthropic was doing. Anthropic was like not interested in this really. Why do they need this? It doesn't really do anything for them. I don't really know. Microsoft obviously has that big investment in OpenAI and they were talking about on internal emails and they were referring to it as the turkey shoot clusterfuck at OpenAI. And I understand the clusterfuck. I don't understand turkey shoot. Like a turkey shoot is an easy killing field of mindless, less than human animals or whatever type thing. That could be used in a military context as well, but I don't really understand how OpenAI was a turkey shoot. I do see it as a clusterfuck. Do you think it was a turkey shoot clusterfuck?
I think people are just afraid of AI, and so a lot of people, their first thing is trying to control it, so they're throwing out just terms, like so clusterfuck and whatever the other one was.
These are senior people at Microsoft. I mean, you have to assume they know kind of what's going on.
Not all of them.
They're not the average person in America. I mean, they're technology company employees. They're calling it. Anyway, do you think it was a turkey shoot?
Like, I agree with what you said. Like, that doesn't really seem to make sense in this context.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's another version of the story where there was this impetus for this removal, where there was this exciting AI breakthrough that was bubbling up from the engineers level. We solved this big problem. And that spooked the board into being like, oh, we are closer to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is, you know, the science fiction version of intelligence where we can talk to it and it falls in love with us and shit. And we don't have that yet, obviously. And honestly, that's not happening anytime soon. If you're listening to this, you'll probably be dead before that happens. But we don't really know, and people are paranoid about it. And some people think that there could be like a super acceleration into AGI and like a Terminator hellscape type thing, which whatever, if that's what you think. And it's called Q star. It's not star, but it's like the asterisk, like in mathematics. And so it's called Q star. And the idea behind it is that it's a mathematical reasoning engine that they developed, where if you ask ChatGPT before and you're like, hey, what's 2x plus y equals 17 or something, it would give you the answer, but it's essentially reading the entire internet to find that problem and then like retrieve the answer for you and put it in front of your face. The idea behind this breakthrough is that it's a mathematical reasoning engine, so it could solve problems it's never seen before, which is one of the big problems with AI. It can't really handle things it hasn't seen before. It would do basically solving problems more like a human. So I don't know exactly how they did it, if it's legit or whatever, but I mean, it would be a step towards AGI. But I mean, we're talking probably 100 steps, and we have no idea how long any of those steps are going to take. So don't bet on like AGI coming anytime soon. But what do you think, Q-Star?
The difference between an algorithm and an AI, like you just pointed out, algorithm, I think, has known outcomes. AI has unknown outcomes. Like you just mentioned, it's kind of hard to know if this is true AI or not. It seems like it's really good. It's the most cutting edge product on the market, and I'm impressed by it.
For this one modality of AI, there's many modalities. This is a large language model.
I don't know, but it sounds almost like a search engine, like what you're talking
there's
about.
Elements of that. I mean, it's like a hybrid, right? I mean, it needs all that information to learn, and sometimes it'll spit it out, but it'll go into different modes depending on how you're interacting with it. Like I said, if you tell it to write a poem, it has some module that's like a poem generator where it's like, I've read every poem in the history of the world in every single language, and it just will, give you something, which can be very good, but it's not novel. It can't create anything new. It's just creating better mixtures of what it's already read before.
In a sense, how's that any different than a novelist? When I wrote my novel, I didn't really create anything different than that.
There can be a genius, a human genius can think ahead, have an idea, a vision of, a novel or a story, a movie that changes the world in a way that AI or some rip-off artist in Hollywood who's just making the 53rd Spider-Man movie to make his living, it can't do that because they're not a genius. And AI is not genius. It's just an adaptable computer that can learn things that you teach it, right? But it's not going to figure out how to win a war, in an unknown battlefield or stuff like that. It's not going to be able to do that at this point.
Why not? I mean, if it can win chess, why can't it win a war?
It's too many variables and unknowns, and there's a lot of human intuition, especially at the commander level.
I agree with that.
Strategic command.
Hugely important.
It can win a battle. It can't win a war because a war involves politics and all these layers, and it can be outflanked essentially because it's not general intelligence. It's narrow at this point.
You mentioned like people are talk about Terminator type things are a little bit crazy, right? And I agree. Like it's unlikely that an AI would be able to reach that level of strength in a short term because it would still have to require resources. Like even Elon Musk, with all of his capability, it takes him years to build one rocket ship. I mean, that's impressive. When people are talking about a Skynet, they're talking like 100, basically 1,000 rocket ships a year type capability suddenly coming up out of nowhere. Going back to your point on science fiction comparisons, yeah. I agree with you.
I mean, something could go wrong. I'm not saying nothing is going to go wrong with AI, but again, when these GPTs, general purpose technologies, they're these special technologies that human beings create that change everything. They touch the dynamics of everything in our entire existence, and they have to be addressed differently than just a better mousetrap happening someplace else. They are fire, agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, computers, the internet, and this mobile handheld devices and stuff like that. And then after that, AI, right? So this is the most recent GPT that we have, and it is the most powerful technology that has ever been created. It is absolutely vital, and we have to adopt it as quickly as possible. Because I mean, think about with fire, we couldn't cook our food. How many early human beings died because they ate raw, bad meat that had maggots in it? Or what if they cooked it, they would have survived? It might not have been like, filet mignon, but I mean, they survive to pass on their offspring and continue the human evolution. All of this stuff is needed, but yeah, in the Industrial Revolution, the factories and the workers were treated like shit, and there was no safety. And like, yes, there were bad things that happened, but these can all be mitigated over time. We've already seen all these things are mitigated, right? When people started cooking over fire, somebody's mom's going to burn their hand every once in a while. You know what I mean? But we have to adapt, get better tools, learn as a society to deal with this stuff, but not hamstring it because all these lawyers want to fucking inject themselves into the system and control it, and then also muck it up so that they can take all their time to negotiate amongst themselves and bill this person and bill that person and be important and be on TV and do all their fucking lawyer shit.
And say they're doing AI.
Slow everyone down, slow the benefit of the human race down so that they can have this case, or there's some AI lawyer or some AI safety woman and the defense bullshit. That is slowing us down. That's going to get people killed, and we might not win the war because of these people, right? Because China doesn't have that shit. They don't even have fucking lawyers, which is okay. That's an advantage they got. Let's be real here, and we need to have moderation, but we got to go as fast as we can.
I mean, it's unlikely that somebody's going to create a true open Skynet like right away or something like that, just because it takes too much resources. I agree with you that I think it's a lot of people posturing to say that they're in AI to try and create their control so that they look good and that they can go out to their dinner parties and talk about that they're working in AI and they're cutting edge, but really they're just the ones hampering progress. And that's usually the case. And so it's kind of funny to me.
That's a poser bullshit. Okay, we're talking about the B-21 bomber, which is this new version, essentially, of the B-2, which has been around our whole lives, depending on how old you are. This new stealth bomber looks kind of like the old one, but it's all upgraded and just at a new generation. Same flying wing design. They've been teasing it for a while. They did like a promotional event recently, but they had the first test flight and there was some video of it flying overhead, which, I mean, honestly looks pretty cool. It's a huge, big, we're good at building these planes. I mean, we waste a lot of money and stuff like that, but these big companies in aerospace, you need a ton of people. This guy has to build the aluminum tubes. They're designing their engine. These people are designing the cap, and then the crew modules and all this shit for space and for these advanced planes and stuff like that. I get it, right? We kind of need these defense companies for that. But for software and technology, we need small teams. These big top-down companies do a shitty job on software and technology and AI and all this stuff. But yes, we get these big planes and we can keep churning these out if we want to spend the money. So we got this new B-21. Now, China obviously not too happy about it because this is what would penetrate their airspace. And honestly, right now, I don't even know if a B-2 could probably fly right over the center of China and they would never know. I mean, I would assume that they might have some advanced radar. And if there's any country that's going to be able to detect a B-2 right now, it's probably going to be China. They said that recently that they developed new radars that can detect these stealth with different types of radar, and they'll kind of cross the data and then they kind of figure out where they're at. So there is a chance that some of these stealth bombers could be detected by these new Chinese radars because they're basically playing defense. They don't need one of these. They're trying to defend against this. Now they go out and they say their hypersonic missiles will take down our B-21 bombers. Does that make sense to you?
Now I feel like I shouldn't say yes. So I was going to joke and say of course they're going to say they can take it down, but
yeah, of course, right.
Well, hypersonic intercept mission. I would feel like it can do it.
I thought it was kind of desperate. They're picking on the hypersonics. They know they're better at hypersonics than us because we got the dunces in charge and we let China beat us on hypersonics. So they got better hypersonics than us. So and the Americans don't know what we got. We already showed them a whooping their ass. They got this new B-21 bomber. We can't match that, right? But we're going to knock it out of the sky with our hypersonics. They're better. What we got. But even if it's a hypersonic missile, it's just a faster missile, which is fine. But the B-21, it's not maneuverable. It's not like it's going to get away from a regular missile and get hit by a hypersonic missile. The point of it is you need to know where it is. If you know where it is and can track it, you can shoot it down with a regular missile. You can shoot it down with a jet aircraft. You could whatever, but you don't know where it is. That's the whole point, right? So you could have a million hypersonic missiles. You don't know where the thing is. You're not going to shoot it down. So it's kind of doesn't make sense unless there's something I'm missing.
They said they could track it, but I think that's typical Chinese propaganda. I don't think it's truth.
Why didn't they say we have new radar and we can track it? They said we have hypersonic missiles, take it down. But you need the radar to shoot the missile, right? So why not say we have radars? I would believe that. They'd be like, oh shit, they got new radars?
They simulated the ability. In their simulation, they defeated it. And it's well, that's just Chinese propaganda. It's bullshit. I bet you
they gotta say something.
B-21, like you said, could just...
Okay, well, you're China. Put yourself in their position, right? You're Xi Jinping or you're some general. Northrop Grumman's rolling out the B-21 and you're looking at it. You're like, this thing's pretty serious. Maybe some Chinese people see it or even the military. You got to instill some kind of esprit de corps in the military. We can fight these Americans. You have to control public opinion. China is strong. The Americans don't have some weapon that we can counter. So they go on TV and they're like, yeah, we got hypersonic missiles. We'll take these guys out. And then all the Chinese people are like, oh, okay, that's good. We're cool still. It's just a propaganda thing, like you said.
You can still shoot them down. I mean, at some point, if you just put up a wall of lead, it'll go down. It can't fly through a wall.
You don't know where it is, man. Where does the wall of lead go?
Right.
What direction is it coming from? How fast is it moving? What's the altitude? You have no fucking idea.
Right. Very impressive component of the nuclear triad.
So this new bomber can also carry our new fancy nuclear bomb, which is a modernization of the old bomb, which is this B-16 version. So we got the B-16-12, which was first designed or whatever in 2021, and they got the first operational in 2022. And I don't think any of the other bombers can carry this missile yet, or this bomb missile. It's innovations. I mean, it's all upgraded and everything and modern, but the innovations are that it has rockets on it that stabilized it by spinning the rocket, kind of like a football, like a quarterback's throwing a football. And it can detonate with different degrees of force. So they can dial up the nuclear explosion to be like, we want 70 megatons, or we want 80 megatons, or 50 megatons, just to like fine tune the destruction. Probably the most important thing I saw here is that it has this RAT system, which is radar aided targeting system. And that is going to enable the weapon to reach its destination target without the use of GPS, because you have to assume probably if we're going to use one of these, that the enemy is going to have some kind of EW capability that's going to jam the GPS. So the bomb would probably still blow up, I guess, but it might not go exactly where we want it. All right. So this is kind of like a backup guidance system, so we don't have to rely entirely on GPS. That's the new bomb. What do you think?
No, I would just say I think this is one of the areas where we're still the best.
Nuclear bombs?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, a nuclear bomb's a nuclear bomb, right? I mean, it's like it blows up. It's just, ideally you don't use it. And it's not even a defensive weapon. I mean, yeah, we have the capabilities, but these other countries have their capabilities as well. It's a dangerous world with stuff out there. Next article is about an article written by out-of-touch military officers retired about how we should reinstitute a draft. I don't agree with these gentlemen. I'm going to say their names because I don't like them. Major General Dennis Leach and Colonel Lawrence Wilkinson wrote this plan of how to address the recruiting crisis. And I'm sure Gen Z is going to love this one. They want to draft y'all up, men and women, no deferments. And if you decide to go to college, you have to be an ROTC and then immediately go in the military after you get out of college and serve 24 months in your 20s in the military when you don't want to. What do you think when you start drafting these kids, they're going to put on TikTok then? Are you just going to ban TikTok? Are you going to gag them? Are you going to make them come to the army every day and just put a ball gag in their mouth so they don't talk shit about you? You're drafting Gen Z people. This is your genius idea. Major General, Major Idiot.
I'm trying to look up his entire war record.
He points out, that's great. I didn't, but he probably is a piece of shit, has never done anything serious. AVF failure, all volunteer force failure. These guys are essentially kind of like light fascists. There's no obligation to defend their country, right? Which is kind of like a nice way of being like, we're going to force people to be in the military. They've talked about civic rot. Part of this is just like the tarnishing of the military brand, which is...
He was a reservist the entire career.
They're blaming the civics of America for people not wanting to join the military when it's their own failures of why young people don't want to and why they've ruined the military brand, which is probably almost irreparable at this point.
I hate this guy. I think...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please tell me the illustrious career of Major Dennis Leach.
I'm not going to even go into it, but he's a career reservist one. Usually I would let you comment on, like, I don't know if he has what his badges are. Like, I think combat infantryman badge.
So he's in the Army.
I feel like if you've just gone through 20 years of war in the Army and you don't have a combat infantryman badge, it's probably, I don't know if he has one or not, but that was what I was looking for.
Does he have combat? Is this a combat general that wants to draft up all the kids?
So my point is, it says that like he was in like readiness in Massachusetts in the reserves for a bunch of time. So like, all right.
This is like a bullshit general.
For one. Number two is, again, it's the usual authoritarian solution. Like you mentioned earlier, that he's like a fascist type guy, right? So, you failed to inspire people to join and serve under your command, and your result is to force them to do it under threat of arrest, right? Because that's what a draft is. You either do this or we throw you in jail.
Yeah, or you go to Canada.
Well, the big question is, like, in the article it mentioned like 75% of young people are not physically fit enough or capable of service right now. So does that mean you're only going to choose the 25% that are capable, or are you going to choose the 75% and train them like a year-long extra basic training to get them into basic fitness, depending on what their deficiency is? There's so many wrong things about it, and all of it comes down to a failure of leadership, a failure of inspiration, not just of the General Corps, but by President Biden. If we had an inspiring president that made people want to serve in the military, that wouldn't be a problem.
And if they hadn't cocked up Kabul, we wouldn't be in this situation either. And they've said nothing about Kabul. It's just like nothing to see here, move on.
Our global perception is down. So why would some kid want to join and possibly die to help make our perception possibly even worse?
Okay, there's a lot of reasons why kids would want to join, but we're missing a key point here, which is like the main innovation here that Dennis has provided us with his idiotic plan is that if the military failed, any branch of the military failed to meet their recruiting goals, that the draft would automatically draft the difference. So the worse they do on recruiting, the more draft they get. Okay, so main problem with this is it creates a disincentive for them to recruit anyone. So you're just going to get on a sliding scale until you're like 99% draft and then one, whatever. And then the other big problem with it is when you're a volunteer, you don't want to serve with draftees. They're going to hate their life. They're going to be miserable. They're going to cause problems or something like that. And you want to serve with like people that want to be there. So you've got this mixture of volunteers and draftees. You're going to have this bifurcated culture. It's going to damage unit cohesion. And it doesn't address the underlying problem, which is that, again, the young people don't want to join the military and they think it's a bad deal for them. And it is. And there's all kinds of problems. So basically, you'll create more problems. You won't fix any of the problems. All you do is solve the general officer's problem, was there's not enough guys on my spreadsheet for me to staff all my units.
Right.
That's the only problem this solves, because that's his perspective. And I would love to know if his kids are in the military or if they're going to fight ever or if they have a combat infantry badge. This guy, we know what happened in Vietnam.
I love how you called it an innovative idea. His greatest innovative idea is to reinstitute the draft, which is basically what tyrants have done throughout time. Great job, Major General. I'm sure that you are a very insightful and brilliant thinker. I'm sure in your readiness role that you have had very incredibly tip-top units that had everything squared away. I don't know anything about this dude, but I don't like him.
It's like always these people that are like dead on the inside and are just like worthless, that have these like bold ideas. It's Dunning-Kruger effect, which is where the stupider a person is, the smarter they think they are. And then you get this Dunning-Kruger guy, and then he gets up into the general officers and, he's buddy-buddy with everybody and nobody wants to embarrass anybody. And then you get this stuff. But this will never happen. I mean, there would be protests in the street. They want to draft men and women. So then also it's like, you haven't fixed the sexual assault problem. So 1 in 3 women over their career in the military are going to get sexually assaulted. So you're basically being like, yeah, we're going to draft all these men, women. So you draft 3 women and you get to line them up and you're like, one of y'all are getting raped. So, and you have to do it. Like, you don't even have a choice. And you're drafting rich people's kids. They're going to be super pissed off. And like, all rich people are going to figure what to get their kid out of it. So basically you're going to de facto only be drafting, middle class and like upper middle or, anything below rich. Like the rich people kids are never going to the military. You'll start getting some of these upper class kids. And he thinks that because these upper middle class kids are in the military, they're just going to go into like Intel or something where they're never going to get killed. You know what I mean? And so you're not going to even get that like anti-war effect that he's going for, where everyone in the country has skin in the game. So they will be more careful about how they deploy the military because everybody's kids are in it. But like the people at the top making the decisions, their kids are never going to the military. I mean, they're just not. They'll just move them to Paris or something. I mean, like if they have to, but there's all kinds of bribes and ways, and they'll file a lawsuit and say he's got bone spurs or whatever. I mean, just the same the Donald Trump thing.
Or you just give him a job at somewhere that's, safe. I worked at the Pentagon. It was very safe there.
Rich people always get what they want. They'll get like a champagne unit or something. Do you see? This doesn't work. It's just a bad idea. These people in charge have bad ideas, and they're confused, out of touch, have no perspective of the modern world and the young kids and technology. It's like we're walking into a buzzsaw with these blind old people leading us, and no one can do anything.
This guy demonstrated that he's the single worst possible leader. Your statement of great innovative thought, bringing back the draft, is the best way to put it, because he's clearly pointed out that he has zero innovative thought and that he brings absolutely no value to his unit, in my opinion.
They should get rid of the draft to regain trust with all of America. Honestly, I don't feel comfortable with them having this tool in their toolkit. If no Americans want to stand up and fight for America, like we just have to quit. Like we can't just be like drafting people so that all the rich people can stay in their mansions while, we're out conquering the world or whatever. I mean,
it did okay in World War II. The draft did okay in World War II. I will say, the draft was okay in World War II. Vietnam, I'm against, obviously, the draft in Vietnam. But draft in World War II probably was the right call.
Did they even need a draft in World War II? I mean, everybody joined.
They needed it after in like the 3rd year.
I don't know about the draft in World War II, but I just don't believe in it. I mean, and honestly, if you need to do a draft and it was like an emergency, you could just institute it. You don't have to just have it like sitting there waiting. I mean, it's not going to happen again. We're going to technology. We're going to robots. If you're drafting anyone, you're drafting high educated technology people that wouldn't work for the government otherwise.
And here's one of the other final thing we didn't even mention. So I'm a libertarian, as you know. So one of the components of it is, so requiring everyone to register for the selective service creates the potential to make someone, I don't know what the penalty for not registering is, but like, is it just a misdemeanor? Is it a felony? What?
They don't do anything to you.
They don't? Okay.
I'm not realistically. I mean, they're not hunting people down for not registering selective service. Now you apply to some government thing. They'll be like, what's your selective service number? And if you don't have it, then like, you're not going to do that government. I thought it was moot. I thought we weren't doing the draft again. Apparently some of these officers back in the back of their mind, it's on the table.
This general is the reason why there's a recruiting problem, because no one would ever want to fight or work for this guy.
Yeah, but they never meet him. He's just sitting in an office somewhere with a spreadsheet counting all his lower middle class young people that he's shuttling into the military, to have to face all these problems that they'll never fix. And that's all he cares. He's just shoveling coal into the furnace. He can't get coal the way he used to, so he's going to get you any way that he can.
Again, if you're a major general in a guard unit, or a reservist, shouldn't you be out in your local community trying to talk up service and get people to join up in your area to fill out your ranks? That should be part of being a general. I guess this guy is just really bad at his job.
Well, it never mattered before. The brand of the military was good, from Desert Storm up until Kabul. So, these guys had an easy ride. The people they put in charge of recruiting at these high levels and stuff, this isn't some elite job, these high-level recruiting officers. They operated and there's a system, there's numbers and whatever, but they've never had this problem before.
The top people in the military don't join the military to be HR recruiters.
Fuck no. No. This is the best of what's left. This is a guy that just wants to put on a uniform every once in a while and have people salute him and feel powerful and get fed his authority fix. He just wants to ride that until forever. And he's still on that drug. He still has that general fucking dopamine drug going on in his mind. So he comes up with these bad ideas. They're out of touch with young people and the nation. And the parents. The parents don't want this either, Dennis. Mason loves talking about F-35. There's some F-35 news popping out. And so I want to bring in F-35 for Mason because he loves shitting on it. And the two main things, obviously, this is a Lockheed program. It's over budget. It's all messed up. It's twice as expensive. They cut the number of planes they're going to get. It's generally considered to be a nightmare and a failure, a joke in a way. There's logistics problems of how they're going to do the logistics of these things over the next 10 or 15 years. And they're also having problems with the software. We can talk about these two things, but I said we're good at aerospace earlier. I said we're good at aerospace. We build these rockets. It's better if Elon does it and we have some business people involved, but most of the stuff gets built even though it's overpriced and not always the best, but we get it done. This is an abortion though. This is the worst airplane problem we've ever had. All these idiot people with their idiot ideas coming together, jerking each other, circle jerk. We're so smart. We're going to save so much money. How much money did you save? Just how much money did you save, please? These planes at a basic level, they are like Ferraris, but they only are operational 50% of the time. So they're twice as expensive because you need two planes to cover what one plane normally would do. Everyone knows the F-35 is a ripoff. And so Congress put language in saying that the only thing that we can control cost-wise right now is sustainment. We've already borne all the costs to develop this plane. And so we're mitigating, but they don't want the logistics costs to keep escalating. This is how the company is going to rip us off over the next 15 years. This is a lot of money. And so Congress said that any changes to logistics, because what they're trying to do is jack it up, have to be associated with better readiness or reduce overall maintenance costs. And they're trying to negotiate this agreement, Lockheed, where they can certify that they have this logistics agreement in place in order to if they don't do a good job, they won't make their money. And so the negotiations have broken down because Lockheed doesn't want to deal with this because they just want to make money. They don't care about the plane and they don't care about the military and they don't care about the cost. This is an external imposition coming from Congress that's tied the military's hands because these defense contractors and these generals are in the middle of a sloppy 69 and they can't get out of it. And they're so wrapped up, the generals will just sign off on logistics forever because it's not their money. They don't care. And they're going to go out and go work for the defense corporations anyway. So why not plus them up with as much dough as they can before they get out, make some friends, play the game, and then they'll reap the rewards once they get out because this plane's going to get built, the bill's going to get paid, all this stuff's going to go down. Everyone's unhappy about it, but there's no one to pin the blame on. You can't pin the tail on the donkey because it's like the Wizard of Oz. We don't know who's pulling the levers behind the curtain because it's this bureaucratic fog that they put up. Whose fault is this? Tell me whose fault is this?
I think it's the contracting process and project managers problem.
Who? There's not one person. We can't throw someone in jail because of the F-35.
We don't know who was the slacker that was just cashing the paycheck while the program failed. Basically, thousands of people.
You should do a special prosecutor for this.
A lot of them didn't necessarily break the law. They just didn't do the best job possible, and they probably were incentivized not to do things. They're probably someone's told, all right, this test failed, so the program's going to slip 6 months. So you guys got to sit there for 6 months and do nothing.
Oh, we got to change this. So we got to, do a change order on the contract. It's going to cost more. We need more hours. It's going to cost more sustainment. These guys are always figuring out how to maximize the amount of money that they're extracting from the government on programs like this. They've got it all planned out. They know exactly how much money they're going to make. Yep. The generals know how much money they're going to make. They're in cahoots, and they still can't deliver. They've got unlimited money.
And they still fail.
No good oversight. No one really knows what they're doing. No consequences if they fail, and they still can't get it right. They can't deliver the software. Technology Refresh 3, there's software problems. It was supposed to be ready in April, and it might slip all the way to June 2024 because, like I said, we're terrible at building technology, and people need to face that. DoD cannot build its own technology the way it's doing it now. It is horrible. This is the worst shit we've got. They have to ship these planes out because we have contracts with like Kuwait and all these places we're supposed to sell these planes to, and they've been waiting for them, and we probably already took their money. They're shipping operationally acceptable planes out to these other countries where we're exporting these weapons. That's what we've got. Who knows if it's even going to be ready in June? What if it's not? Who's getting fired? Whose head's going to roll? No one.
Somebody will probably get promoted at the contractor because they'll probably find a way to get more money for doing the same work.
Yeah, fail your ass up the ladder. Yeah, definitely. Another organization that is failing is the IDF, and obviously their intel services. A lot of it having to do with political divisions and poor leadership, but there's cultural problems here. We talked about the female lookouts on the Gaza border reporting that the farmers had gone away. Not a good sign. And that there were these men out there that they hadn't seen before going up and down, pointing here, pointing there, practicing shooting, throwing grenades. I mean, how much more obvious does it have to be for you guys? Ignore these women. Stop talking about this, stuff like that. We also have female junior analytical IDF officer in probably the most elite special ops unit in Israel, Unit 8200. She was the only person warning about this mass intrusion attack. And then the New York Times reported last week that the Israeli government knew about it. They had the full plan of attack for this. It'd be like if we had the 9/11 plan of attack and we like did nothing about it. We're like, they'll never do that. That's crazy. You know, it's just a failure of imagination and understanding that this is going to come. This woman knew it. One thing, actually, I thought about this, Israel, with this woman, listen to me, promote ahead of peers, and all these people she was working with, fire them all, get them the fuck out of there right now. This is going on for 2 years. We had the Hamas intel unit, the guy in charge of it, cut their weekend hours, cut their evening hours, cut their workforce, and said that we're not going to attack the Hamas attack through traditional means like eavesdropping and human intelligence. It's going to be social media and like new media. We're going to find out that Hamas is actually coming for us. This same guy that did this was on Israeli TV 5 days before the attack or so, saying how Hamas ain't going to do anything, calling them bitches. You know what I mean? They're afraid of us. I mean, like, come on. Dude, they're probably laughing amongst themselves, knowing that their attack was about to come, and you're on TV. No idea. Right? This is the people in charge here. And they're also saying that Benjamin Netanyahu was warned personally. Like someone came up to the prime minister and was like, Hamas is going to come in hard on 2 occasions. And he ignored it, of course. And for political reasons, they had the Gaza battalion that's supposed to protect down there. They basically emptied out all the military from there, moved them into the West Bank. And you think Hamas didn't know this? Of course they knew this. Put them in the West Bank to back up West Bank because they want to do some settler activities. Dumb fucking move. You know what I mean? Like, dumb move, dumb, perfect storm of dumb moves. And this stuff happens in our military too. I mean, don't act like we're any better than this. We've got the same dumb officers. We've got the same women that are not getting overlooked. It's not just a woman and a sexism thing. She's a nonconformist, right? I mean, we've been in military units, how many people, man or women, junior analytical officer is going to go in some elite Delta Force unit, something like that, and be like, you're all wrong. You're missing something here, whatever. And they're just like, nah, get out of here. Get out of here, kid. Whatever. Who is going to press that? Very few people because of the groupthink and the conformity. I mean, this woman was certain. This is like similar to the CIA woman who was leading the bin Laden hunt. Sometimes these women can do these things and people are not following through. I mean, the bin Laden thing, eventually they let her go because she was probably so convincing about it. But I mean, we let bin Laden go for 10 years. 10 years. He shouldn't have lived 10 days after what he did.
I agree.
I just like present this as an analogy to our military because like we have these same problems. Their military is just the same as ours. They do the same dumb shit. They've got all these political influences and whatever. We're not any better than them.
I loved the logic that she had, like the female intelligence analyst. I was just like, all the locals are gone and there's new military age fighters here and they all seem well equipped. Like that seems like a pretty good idea that there's something going on, or at least
no shit.
The common sense there. The fact that they ignored that. Her superiors, as you mentioned, they need to clean house and do some better training. Also, I'll say this is a great example of why women are great in the military. You look at this role as an intelligence analyst. Again, I was a communications officer. There was not a single time that my physical strength was useful in my job. So it doesn't matter, male or female could do my job. Male or female could do intelligence. And in this case, this woman was clearly the best analyst in the entire room and was overlooked. So that's unfortunate.
She's a nonconformist. There might be a person sitting next to her, another woman or whoever, who IQ-wise, or she's objectively smarter, more intelligent, or went to a better college or whatever, better at math, however you want to quantify, read more books. But because of her nonconformist way of thinking, she's able to see what the person isn't able to see, right? Because they got blinders on and her blinders are off because she's a nonconformist, right? But the military doesn't like nonconformists. We all have to be the same, right? So the general can't tell us apart. We're all interchangeable. Is this woman interchangeable?
Clearly not. They need to value this person.
We're all humans. We're not chits, on your chessboard for you to play officer games with, And I mean, she's an officer too, but I mean, come on. All these intel people mostly are officers because they kind of need a college degree.
I'm actually in the process of reading up on the history of Israel. I would say if anybody wants to study up on Israel, what I would actually suggest is Jimmy Carter's book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, is probably the most balanced book you could probably find, I would guess. Or a former president talking about the issues that he was leading from an American perspective.
Tommy Tuberville looks like he's about to stop or adjust the way that he is kind of messing with the military to try to get them and the Department of Defense to change his abortion thing and the woke policies he doesn't like. Chuck Schumer put a vote for resolution on the schedule, being like, hey, you have until this date to figure this out. We're going to do a temporary rules change, fix the situation. They don't want to change the rules altogether. And they have to get Republicans to help because they got to get over 60 votes. But they really can probably get that many Republicans, but the Republicans don't want to vote on it. Even the ones that would vote with the Democrats against Tommy, they don't want that because it makes them look bad. So it's kind of like a incremental daring of someone's got to fix this. They've put a lot of pressure, and the Democrats have put a lot of pressure on the Republicans in order to convince Tommy to change his tune. So it seems like they've gotten through to him to where he's changing his plan a little bit. And so now all the media is like, oh, Tommy's defeated. This is the stupidest thing he's ever done. It's actually a very smart tactic that he's used. And it is like a football game. You know what I mean? He was on offense.
He's still on offense.
No, he's on defense now because they'll get distracted with something else and he'll come back. You know what I mean? He is he's probably the most strategic person in the entire Senate, maybe even going back for decades. So Tuberville is yielding a little bit, he was on offense, whatever. They're kind of masked forces against him and are encroaching on his flanks a little bit with these Republicans. So he backs off a little bit. He lets a few through. He lets a little pressure off the steam pipe, but he doesn't give up his leverage. And then they'll be forced to accept what he gives them and it'll keep going. It's very strategic what he's doing. He says, I don't think he has the vote. So he's telling Chuck that he doesn't think he can actually do what he's going to do, but he's still going to back off a little bit. It's like lawyers, they don't want to go to trial because you really never know exactly what the jury's going to do. You can have a good idea, but you never know what the jury's going to come back with. They don't want to go to trial. So it puts him in a settlement talk. So right now he's basically doing a partial settlement, being yeah, I'll let someone through or whatever, but he's not going to give up. He has struck gold with his tactic and he's the one who identified it. They just had one of the other senators block the NSA guy or whatever. So, this is not going anywhere. He's an innovator. We'll just see what happens, I guess.
So what, you think they're going to start blocking all government promotions in the near future until everyone gets their way?
I think it's going to be a tactic that the Senate is going to use in order to get these people's attention. Yeah, I think it is.
Tommy Tuberville started off using military promotions as a tactic to create his political agenda. And it's about abortion laws specifically. My understanding is that it wasn't necessarily completely at random. It was in the article, it said that they're using government funding to get abortions in states where it was legal and leaving states where it was illegal, I think is what the problem was. It's not completely random to not promote military people. So because he's trying to change a military behavior as opposed to just a general behavior and holding the military hostage. Since I'm trying to say he's not completely using it as a political tactic. It's not just a random thing. When I first read this, I disliked him a lot because I was I hate when people just use military as pawns, and I felt like that's what he was doing. Then when I dove into it and I was oh, okay, he's actually holding the military responsible for violating what he thinks is the laws that they're supposed to be following. Whereas a military leader might be looking at it like they're protecting the troops against the violations of Congress overreach at the current time. It's kind of interesting just from all different sides of like how the different stakeholders might look at it. But John, honestly, I'm surprised that you are pro Tommy Tuberville in this case, because I thought that you would hate anyone that was screwing around with the military, but because it's generals, maybe you're okay.
I'm screwing around with the military, dude. Like, everyone needs to screw around with the military. They're fucked, man. They're going to get our kids killed because the people in charge are stupid and they're still building technology in the old ways. And China is racing, and eventually they will top us out on technology. They will get close to us and they will start beating us. We already talked about the hypersonics, right?
When you say like doing technology the old way, it's so much funny to me when I watch people do technology, especially software projects, and it's like they're doing it the same way technology was done 20 years ago. And it's like there's literally new languages, so many new tools and enhancements in this world. It feels to me like the government's still building GeoCities websites sometimes because I don't know.
Through contractors, et cetera, the DoD has more software engineers and developers and technology than any organization in the history of the world. They spend more money on this shit and we get the worst tech. It's just the system. Tommy doesn't like the social issues. Or, I don't care about social issues that much. And, other people do, whatever. But I just want us to win the war. And someone has to puncture these people and like their propaganda, because the organization itself perpetuates propaganda about the recruiting crisis, Kabul, all these failures. They'll just do this corporate spin job on anything that makes them look bad, just like China. It's the same thing that China's doing, that we do. And, what about Pat Tillman? What about all this other stuff? You know what I mean? And they put down everything as it's like, we're this like glistening organization with no issues. And we've like, it's a cancer. Like any officer that does something wrong, they're like, oh, we fired him. Oh, we fired him. We fired her. But that doesn't absolve you because you're all failing. The whole organization is failing. They're just picking off these people to be like, oh, we're righting the ship when we find it, if there's a problem. But like, we're all generally pretty good, like trying to protect their image, but the kids see through it. Major Dutch semiconductor manufacturer NXP had a sophisticated Chinese-led hack that was persistent from 2017 until 2020, where they would go in every couple weeks, see if there's any new data on the system. They would extract that data. The only reason it was detected was because there was another breach at a Dutch airline. And in the investigation of that breach, they found IP addresses from NXP, letting them know essentially that NXP had been compromised. China is stealing all this stuff. Like, you think we're better than them or smarter than them, or like our technology is going to last forever? It's not. They'll steal everything. And they have done it, and they've already done it. It's a certain amount of time. They take all that and they put it together. Like when the Iranian hostage crisis, when the Iranians went in the embassy and the CIA started shredding the documents, but back then they didn't have cross shredders. It was just like strips. They took over the embassy and they found all this stuff. They put all that shit in a room. They got some Iranian kids in there, fucking tape all that shit back together. You might as well not even have shredded it, CIA boys. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. They're going to put it back all together. They're going to catch up. They're doing it for China. They're not going to stop. We got the guys, taking the 4-day weekends. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't get 4-day weekends. You're lucky if you get a 1-day weekend. Okay. And this is why the military can't run this stuff, because you're not entrepreneurs, because you will go on the 4-day weekend. You will not work like an entrepreneur works. Yeah, you'll go out into the woods and your dick gets cold and you have to eat hot chow out there or whatever, but you're not an entrepreneur. Most of them. And the entrepreneurs that are in there are held down by the conformity and the groupthink, and they'll never be able to use their entrepreneurness while in the military. They have to break out of the military in order to activate their entrepreneur capability. Organizations set up to eschew entrepreneurs. You will not be successful in the military if you're an entrepreneur. If you're a conformist and a bootlicker, straight to the top.
I will say I had a pretty different experience. Like, I thought entrepreneurial ideas were rewarded a good bit for me. There was only one time that I was really disappointed, where I was like, I would like to look into this one thing, and I was told no.
There's always going to be some guy above you that for some reason will step on your dick. He thinks you're a threat. He doesn't want a distraction within his unit. He doesn't want to use up the resources. He doesn't care. Whatever. Doesn't like you personally. Jealous of you, maybe. Any number of reasons. Your idea will be killed in the military. When out in the real world, where money talks and bullshit walks, and no one's wearing rank, your idea would have taken off like a rocket ship. This is a good idea.
It's about resources. Who has resources, and
control.
Some good ideas don't take off because they don't have resources.
It's control. Who controls the resources? There's resources, but the people who control it don't support ideas because it's a risk. Like if they support your idea, it's a risk to them and their career and their family and their mortgage and what they want to do because it's personal, right? I mean, they don't take risks. That's not how you get to the top of the military by taking risks.
Go back to China. China has resources. They can have an entire, very well-manned cybersecurity team to go after any data that's available anywhere they can go after. So if there's anything that's just connected to any network anywhere, China probably is going to find a way to exploit it. If it's online, there's just no way to stop them probably.
Can't stop them. Even if it's air gap, they got two-minute intelligence, they'll get in there. They have the most massive spying operation globally and focused on us ever in the history of the world. And the Russians have great spies too, but this is at a scale. The FBI cannot handle this. The FBI is not designed to fight China like this, and we're losing.
Free societies will always lose in an espionage game. You should clip that.
Yeah. All right. Last article here is infuriating. It's from this military dick who almost is. Well, now he's worse. This Marine guy's worse than the
I commented on this on Instagram. I heard about this on Instagram and I was like, fuck this guy.
Oh, this guy's such a dickhead. Basically, this graduate school Marine officer that thinks he's the shit and above everybody else.
I think his ROTC was his. How did he get his commissioning source? What was his commissioning source?
Military should stop giving commissions to enlisted, which is this pattern where sometimes a person will go in as enlisted and they'll go to West Point or they'll go to college and come back, or they'll go to something, or they green to gold, or they have all these programs. So there's ways for enlisted to become officers. To be clear, the only difference between an enlisted and an officer is the presence of a college degree at the beginning of their career. And because college degrees cost money, it's essentially an economic discriminator. Now I will say, and I was in the military as enlisted, and I had a college degree, and I saw what was happening. I knew the enlisted, obviously, because I was with them. And I see the officers. I knew that reasonably well and stuff too. Now, I will say that I think to do most leadership jobs in the military, you probably do need a college degree. But should it create this bifurcated officer enlisted culture? I don't think so. And I also think by predicating it on presence of a college degree, which anyone can get a college degree. So by doing that, there's no selection for leadership ability, right? You can have an enlisted that is a natural leader. Maybe they came from a poor background, they didn't get a college degree or whatever. You could have an officer who's a total loser. He just had a college degree. I mean, get this guy out of here. And everybody wants to follow the E6 or whatever. You have to start with leadership at a young age. And it's best to test these people when they're young age. You can fake it when you're 35. Figure out if these people are leaders when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, when they can't fake it. Put them through something, figure out who's a leader and who's not, then put them on the track. And if they need the education, give it to them and put them on their track. But this is bullshit. And then this is just like an old way of thinking. This guy puts himself up there like he's some psychological master's degree studying veterans bullshit at some fancy Ivy League school. Okay, you want to say that? You want to put yourself out there as that? His ideas are old-fashioned. Many people have been thinking of getting rid of this officer enlisted thing, and it makes more and more sense every day, and he's just totally off base. His name is Ivan Snook, and he posted on X.
He's obviously just everything that everyone hates about officers. He's the reason why officers get a bad name. I mean, the very first thing, when you're like, he's looking down on the very people he's supposed to lead.
In the Marines, they call these people Mustangs. It's like enlisted to officer. Mustangs erode the esteem, legitimacy, and distinct culture of the officer corps, like merchants marrying into the aristocracy. The merchants during the Renaissance became very wealthy, even having more money than the aristocrats, but they would not marry them in because they came from humble beginnings, I guess you could say, right? New money, right? He's basically saying old money versus new money.
He's creating a snobbish reason to be better than someone based off of a characteristic that, in this case, being an officer, which is stupid. Again, rank is not that big of a deal in the military for the most part, outside of training units, I think. This guy is clearly trying to demonstrate all of his ego. Like what you mentioned about the general who just wants to be able to have that authority every once in a while. That's how I feel about this guy, because he clearly overvalues his officership, number one. Then the second thing I would say is, again, he clearly has a disdain for the enlisted and doesn't value their contribution when those guys are better than him at probably every single component of the job. And I wonder what value this guy, Ivan Snook, adds to whatever unit he is in and whatever team he's a part of. But usually the enlisted, again, are the subject matter experts. And your job is to get out of the way and enable them as an officer. And then hopefully, if you're smart enough long term, you learn from them and you're like, hey, show me how to do that. But this guy seems to clearly not understand that. I bet you no one would ever really want to follow that guy. Like I wouldn't want to work for him. And on top of that, the Marines, there's a stigma. They're always mistreated, right? Like the Marines are always like in a position where they don't have what they need. The Marine rhetoric, somewhere that their officers fucked it up. And like I always kind of laugh because I'm like, man, Marine officers, I know some of them, they're awesome dudes. But like this guy, this Ivan Snook guy, he's the kind of guy who gets his Marines into a location that they shouldn't be in and gets them in a lot of trouble because clearly he doesn't think things through and doesn't appreciate them. So I just really don't like this guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to not like about him. The officer enlisted divide in the Navy and the Marines is much more than in the Army. The officers in the Army, especially in combat, they have to be with the men. Otherwise, they're not going to fight for you, right? And we know that in the Army. So it's not quite the same in the Army, but more so in the Navy. So he makes this analogy to enlisted because he's trying to basically talk to enlisted. And he's basically saying it's like when you're a young enlisted and you're at that point where it's like some of your friends get promoted to sergeant, right? So you're still like a corporal or you're under that. And this guy, you're buddy with him. And before he got promoted, when a sergeant would come by, you would be like rigid, like, on your best behavior. But once your buddy, your drinking buddy, your homeboy, whatever, he gets sergeant and you see him walking around with that rank, all of a sudden you lose that mystique for the sergeant, right? Because like, oh, my buddy, I could do that, like whatever. He's analogizing that to the officers. And he's really talking about the officer corps and the mystique of the officer corps as being this like elite thinking, strategic, tactical, like unit leader, and inherently having these leadership skills that the rest do not in order to lead them. So he says that same thing, where if you take enlisted and elevate them to officer when the other enlisted be like, oh, he used to be enlisted, then they're like, oh, I don't take these officers that seriously. Anybody could do it. I could do it. There's nothing special about them. Whatever. I mean, maybe there's 1% of that or something. I don't know if that really damages the military in any way. And then he also puts it back on to the enlisted, saying that the enlisted like the Mustang situation because to them, they don't think that the officers are any better. These uppity enlisted that think that they could do what we could do. And so the Mustang proves that they're just as good of us. So it's like an equalizer in a way. And so he's like, that shouldn't be a thing either. And then finally, obviously there's backlash on him on X. And so he puts up this like defensive post where he talks about he's in graduate school at Columbia University and he's studying all this psychoanalytic research and name dropping and stuff like that, being like, I'm better educated than you. So he's basically like, as he's being attacked, he's retreating into his psychological like neuroses anyways, which has started this whole thing. This is obviously a guy with a bent mental perception of the military. He just doubled down on it, right? And he's being like, who are you to talk to me? I'm at Columbia University studying psychology. I've read Sigmund Freud. You know what I mean? You're just some asshole out there. What does he say? He says a few years ago, I probably almost certainly would not have agreed with myself. He's basically saying, now that I've achieved my education, I'm a higher form of thinking. I'm an expert on this, and I'm telling you how it is. I would not have agreed with myself. I would have been one of those guys anonymously shitting on me on Twitter. Well, I'm shitting on you, and I'm not anonymous. And fuck you.
Shitting on you too.
Mason's shitting on you too. And we're not anonymous.
Yeah.
So take your bullshit and fuck off. You know what I mean? But we got to protect against people like this. Like this guy.
I would never want to be in a unit with him in any way.
I'd love to have him on real. He sounds like great for Real Veteran News.
Well, it would be really, you should destroy. But I'll say, again, prior enlisted are usually actually much better officers than non-prior because they have more experience and they have more empathy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous because they're better officers. Like prior enlisted officers are better, except for the officers who are like gods and they're just like, they got the physical, they're smart, they're switched on, they've got everything. I mean, there's just some like perfect guys out there like that and gals. But I mean, in general, a prior enlisted officer is going to be a better leader because they've been enlisted. It's just obvious.
Yep.
Right?
No, Ivan Snook, you're the reason why Marines are known to have bad morale.
I don't know if you can make that, but this could have been an Army guy. This could have been a Navy guy. I mean, there's other officers out there that have kind of, talked down on the enlisted and stuff like that.
Marines are the most disgruntled of all the services. Like they're always the ones complaining the most, the ones that always have like the most poorly equipped. And I'm just thinking he's the reason why.
He is talking about doubling down on the officer enlisted and divide, whereas people like me and other people want to essentially eliminate it. So this guy obviously is like my intellectual opposition, and he's not doing too well. So I'm happy about that.
How would you get rid of rank? At some point, you just need like a pay grade. Like how do you determine how much people get paid?
I think everybody should get paid the same.
So like so somebody who would be an E1 would be making the same amount as a chief?
No, I mean, you have to have like gradations of experience and stuff like that. But I mean, you have like one rank structure. And then once you identify someone as like a potential leader, you elevate them into command of a unit. But if you're not in command of something, you're just like everybody else, right? And then you can flex back and forth. You know what I mean? But it's not this like permanent situation where you're just like above everyone else all the time.
Yeah, that's the aristocracy and the way that guy looks at it. But that's what a bad leader would look at it.
Like, prove yourself.
I would never even consider an officer to be considered to be an aristocrat, because that to me is an insult. Like if you're the gentleman officer that's going to dinner parties, well, you probably can't fight.
Not all officers want to fight. Some of it's like political stuff, or they're just walking the halls, you know? I mean, there's many different parts of the military, and there's a lot of different experiences and everything. But yes, you get a doctor or something, you gotta get paid a little bit more. But the core of the military, like the units and the fighters and the core functions of the military, where there is this officer enlisted divide, we gotta like level it out. And when you find someone who's a good leader and who's committed to a military career and who has good morals and everything like that, get them the education they need, and then you facilitate them to achieve. But like, you don't just base it on who has a college degree and who doesn't. Anyone can see that that is stupid. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried had a college degree. What if Sam Bankman-Fried was your battalion commander?
I think this is the example of they thought that this guy would be a good leader, and it turns out he's not. Like, so it's like, sometimes you get it wrong. Like this guy,
who knows if he was a good leader or not? I mean, his ideas are idiotic. Maybe he was a good leader. I don't know. I mean, he's not even talking about himself. He's talking about all.
You're espousing not allowing people to have opportunity. His very thesis is to deny people opportunity that they would like to have because a decision they might have made 20 years ago, it's actually still a good decision. So it's like his whole thing. So there's no way that guy could be a good leader when his whole premise is about denying opportunity. Sorry. So I know he's a bad leader.
Okay. He's exclusionary, definitely. And usually as a leader, it's better to be inclusive than exclusive. I mean, in some cases, being exclusive, having an exclusive situation can be good, but generally you want to be inclusive.
I commented on this on Instagram like yesterday, so I was really happy when I saw
this. What was your comment
on
Instagram?
Fuck this Even Snook guy. Something like that.
What'd you call him?
Even Snook. I don't know how to say his name.
You just said fuck him.
Yeah, just fuck him. And again, he's the reason why Marine enlisted usually hate their officers, because that guy seems like he would be the worst person to have as your...
I don't know if Marine enlisted hate their officers. I mean, I think that in combat, I think there's a bond between the Marine officer and the Marine. There's a lot of Marines that don't do combat. So I think it could be mixed bag.
So my best friends are Marine officers, and they're awesome.
They could be awesome, and the enlisted could still hate them. Those are two different things.
True. Good point.
You know, like in the infantry, I believe there's a bond. Now, are there Marine officers, like the Marine officer at the Pentagon I used to work for, 3-star dipshit? I mean, that guy was ruining everything. So, you know, it's not going to be great. That's the last article, and thank you, Mason, coming out. Do you have any final farewells for this week?
No, just interesting to see how the ceasefire with Israel is going to turn out. And with Israel Hamas, we didn't really talk about that too much, but like kind of shocked to see that Israel might not go full takeover. I was expecting them to go biblical on this one. They haven't.
All right, so Mason's going to be watching Gaza, and the rest of us will be too. We'll be back next week with another show. So thanks everybody for watching, and talk to you later. Bye.